third generation Marshfield resident, firefighter in town, small business owner, married, I have 5 children. I am running as your independent candidate because I want to run for the people, not for the party.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Ed O'Connell. I'm a 26-year resident of Marshfield, married, have 2 daughters, graduate of Suffolk University MBA, and worked 26 years in state government and for the private sector for GE and Raytheon. So I've always been involved in my community and looking forward to representing the people of Marshfield and Situate.
I'm Patriot Kearney. I'm seeking the Democratic nominee for the open state representative seat for the 4th Plymouth District. I live in Situate. I'm a Mass Maritime grad, officer in the Navy, and I run charter and commercial fishing boats in Situate. I'm a member of the local 11 Stage Handlers Union. I am the Vice President of Business Development of the software company Price Blocks, and I'm really looking forward to continuing my public service in the legislature.
Awesome. So, Ed, we'll start with you. The first thing I think that, especially today with all of the storms that are hitting people, is coastal resiliency. If elected, how would you support improving that for residents? Are there any specific programs you've supported in the past that you think are good ideas, or maybe think it's time to look beyond what we're doing now?
Sure. Well, as a reserve deputy sheriff in Plymouth County for the past 8 years, I've seen the storms up front personal. I've been down at Wrexham and Brent Rock when the storms hit, when the breaches hit. Been involved with ice storms and blackouts, power outages. So I've seen, the worst of times and the best of times. First responders are great. I've worked in the Emergency Operations Center in Marshfield. So what I think can work is more of what's been going on. Repair the seawalls, make them higher, make them stronger, make sure they're done on time, on budget, and in a safe manner, and just make sure that we look at long-term solutions also and look at alternatives like these wave attenuating devices. That could be a good solution that's been talked about. And also just coastal property owners, seeing what options they have, and working with the Massachusetts Coastal Coalition. They have a lot of great ideas. So just continue to work and represent the people who live on the ocean, on the coast, and try to help them out.
Same questions you've had about coastal issues.
So I think that coastal issues are one of the biggest issues that are facing Marshfield and Situate. With over 2,000 homes in the floodplain in Marshfield, over 1,500 in Situate, it's very important that we're not only looking at infrastructure projects and infrastructure repairs to make sure that the residents of Marshfield and Situate are protected. It was mentioned before, but seawalls, making sure that those are replaced and improved. The fiscally responsible thing to do is look at the wave attenuation devices. They're about $1,200 a linear foot versus a $4,000 linear foot. So it's the more fiscally responsible thing to do to use those, and they protect the seawalls that are still in place. We need to have accurate flood insurance maps so the people that are in high-risk zones are paying their fair share into the National Flood Insurance Program, but also to make sure that the flood insurance maps are accurate and the people that really shouldn't be in the flood zone aren't unduly paying into a system that they don't need to be paying into. The other thing that's the short term. Looking at the long-term solutions, in the last legislative session, the legislature did not pass a lot of the climate change initiatives that the Senate sent them. And what needs to be done as the next state representative is to be working in the legislature, collaborating with House leadership and the other 159 reps to make sure that the climate change initiatives, like tax breaks for companies that are willing to implement green policy in their business plans, and allowing credits for individuals that hi, how are you?
This is Gary, our photographer, who'll be taking some pictures for the print version of the story.
Perfect. And making sure that individuals have access to grant programs to explore solar energy as well. On the national level, we've pulled out of some of our climate change progress that we've made. On the state level, we need to be making sure that we do everything that we can to reduce climate change and its effects on the districts.
So I said from the very beginning of my campaign that we need to repair these seawalls. I've been a proponent for wave attenuating devices since the very beginning. I believe that...
Can you tell us a little bit about those?
So wave attenuating devices, what they do is they basically break down the kinetic force of the waves, so the force is less powerful on the seawalls themselves. But what else they've been proven to do down south is they replenish the beaches also, to the point where down in South Carolina they're moving these wave attenuating devices out even further out at sea. They've replenished the beaches so much. And as you can see, you know, Fort Cliff and various other areas of our coastline could use a beach replenishment. So I think those are two very strong things that I think need to be done right away.
Great.
Specifically how those work, they're shaped kind of like a trapezoid, and they have holes in them. So when a wave is coming towards the coastline, they're put next to each other, and when the wave hits the wave attenuation device, some of the energy is dispersed and sent back out, some of it goes through the holes. As Nate was describing, the sand is allowed to go through some of those holes and it builds the beach up on the backside, but they're also angled so that the energy of the waves go in different directions and disperse. So then the energy is not hitting the seawall directly, it's dispersed in different directions and going into itself. So
to hit on some of these green things, green laws that weren't passed, I think a lot of them weren't passed is because the State House dragged their feet for so long, and both the Democratic and the Republican parties aren't getting along right now. As you can see with the state budget, that wasn't done until 2 months after it was set to be done. I think that's a very big issue, and as I've said from the beginning, I think this bundling of bills is a big problem, and that falls in the same category, because when it gets down to crunch time, the legislators, they try and bundle all these bills at the very last minute and push them through. And we, as a state representative, you have to be looking at each bill individually and how it affects our district.
And Mary, FEMA maps were mentioned, and so I live in a FEMA flood zone right now. At first I wasn't. I was surprised, like a lot of residents were, to receive a bill from my mortgage company to say I was in the flood map. So I appealed it, and then I was out of the flood zone, and now I was told just recently I'm back in the flood zone. So, you know, that's an issue I would address also as a representative, because I know it's still an issue for a lot of coastal residents, and, you know, affordable flood insurance affects us all.
Great. All right, so the next thing I think that are in a lot of people's minds, especially parents, and you've spoken to how close in age you are to some of these people, so you really understand what's going on in schools, and you both have kids, is the opioid crisis. I think people are really concerned about how we're educating people about the opioid crisis and how we're gonna, you know, put an end to that and help people who've already been affected. So, Pat, do you want to start about how you would support that if you were elected to the legislature?
Yeah, and I said this in last night's debate. I've been talking about it since the beginning of this campaign. The ongoing opioid epidemic. We're losing really so many individuals, not only in Marshfield and Scituate, but throughout the Commonwealth and the United States. And it's a multifaceted approach. It's going after some of the pharmaceutical companies that are encouraging doctors to push these drugs. It's using blockchain technology to make sure that someone with a prescription isn't filling them at multiple pharmacies the same prescription. As well as making sure that we have a comprehensive education program in our public school systems for young kids to make sure that they know the dangers of these drugs, and helping individuals that are addicted, making sure that we have treatment facilities. A big problem on the South Shore is that we're at a huge disadvantage because we don't have a lot of affordable and accessible treatment facilities on the South Shore. I'd like to see state funding to increase that accessibility for individuals that are already struggling with their addiction.
Can I just ask Pat a question?
Sure.
How do you plan to incorporate blockchain?
You can run a state program and require all pharmaceutical companies or all pharmacies to have that technology in their pharmacy to make sure that if you fill your prescription at CVS, that you're not then going and paying cash for that same. So right now we have in place that if you fill a prescription and your insurance company covers that, you can fill that and insurance will pay for it at that particular pharmacy. If you're then willing to take that prescription and go to a different pharmacy and you pay cash for that, you can also fill that. With the blockchain technology, it would incorporate it into a system that all the other pharmacies can see if you filled that prescription or not, and it would reduce the number of drugs on the
but
street.
As far as blockchaining goes itself, how would you incorporate it?
I just said.
Would you like to respond to the question? Now we're switching over to you.
I mean, it was very clear what I said. So.
It is, but blockchaining is I feel like a big buzzword right now, and I don't think a lot of people realize exactly how it works and how integrated it really is. And I think a big thing, especially on State Street, is how to incorporate blockchaining, and they're trying to figure that out right now. And it obviously it hasn't really been figured out. I know Bitcoin is run off blockchaining, but a lot of
so
that's pretty much it.
What I think you're trying to talk about is blockchain technology in the financial sector, which allows for trading of artificial online monies. But what I'm talking about is the same technology that allows that trading to happen on a world scale, and that communication is in Bitcoin and stuff like that. It's a totally different sector, and where that same technology for that trading is being used to protect the consumer in the pharmaceutical field. So it's just two different things. You're comparing apples to oranges.
So to get back to your question, school safety and the opioid crisis. I believe, again, as a deputy sheriff, I've had training in Narcan and school active shooter scenarios. Unfortunately, hopefully they never have to be used, my training. However, I think in Marshfield and in Situate, they're doing great proactive stuff, having more cameras, school resource officers, and just being more proactive about how to make the school room a safe and nurturing place to learn. And that also, as a representative, I work with nonprofits that exist now, South Shore Peer Recovery, Plymouth County Drug Abuse Task Force, that are doing great work. Try to work with them and incorporate a lot of what they're doing on a statewide level.
Can I just add, as far as the opioids go, as a firefighter paramedic, I've dealt with it from the onset. I think it's a multi-level, multi-dimensional problem. There is no one solution to it. I think one very easy solution right off the bat that's a no-brainer that can get pushed through is a Section 35. So what a Section 35 does is very similar to Section 12, where if you have a loved one that you're worried about that's in harm's way, it's basically going to overdose, or you think can. You can file for a Section 35, and that gets them evaluated and gets them into a facility. Problem with it right now is it's only done during judge's hours, which is Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I would like to see that done 24 hours, 7 days a week. I think mental health is a huge problem, and that plays into your opioid crisis right now. I think the way that healthcare right now manages mental health it downplays it, and the funding isn't there to take care of it right now. I think you have the facilities at both Taunton and Bridgewater, and this area in particular, that have the room, but they don't have the funding. And then I think just early onset education, getting to these kids early before middle school, maybe sitting down with some of these school committees and coming up with an educational plan to let these kids know the effects of drugs, and also educating the parents and letting them know that it's okay to say no, and the signs and symptoms to look for and where to look for help.
If I could mention one thing about the Section 35, which I think Nate brings up a great point about Section 35. I was speaking with the Chief of Police in Marshfield the other day, and what was brought to my attention at the vigil for the ongoing opioid epidemic in Marshfield was that the people, when they use a Section 35 or commit somebody, they don't get a notification when they're released if they're above the age of 18. So a lot of people's family members commit them into an addiction facility, and they don't know if they've come out. And what happens is, if they don't have the appropriate treatment that they need, and they're not completely on the right track, their body has come down from being exposed to those drugs, and typically that is when they're at highest risk for overdose. So I'd like to see a state law that says any family member that commits someone that's struggling with addiction at least gets notified when they come out of an addiction facility, so that their family and the police department's aware of it. Keeps them safe.
Great. I'm trying to see we have a few questions that have come into the live forum. That's One of them I can't see the end of, so that's what I was trying to figure out.
Oh, boy.
I don't know where that's going. But on another one, someone asked if you guys could weigh in on question 1. We kind of, I think, steered in the medical direction, which, as you know, probably caps the number of patients assigned to each nurse in a hospital. And there's a pretty big fine for hospitals if they violate that. So yeah, just the question was, would love to hear if candidates support question 1.
I think question 1, I have family members who are nurses and in the medical profession, and you know, they're leery about the flexibility of, you know, mandated patient limits, that type of thing. So they're worried about the flexibility of the nurses themselves and their quality of care. On the other hand, there are nurses that believe they want those limits. So, you know, to me, however the ballot goes, I will work as a state legislator and make sure that's done properly.
In regards to question 1, I think that it's very important that, you know, we do have safe patient limits. I think that nurses take care of us, and we should take care of them. From what I have heard from knocking the over 6,500 doors in Marshfield and Situate to hear the concerns of residents, the biggest thing that I've heard from nurses is not actually the ballot question. It's actually the safe workplace environment that they face every day. A lot of nurses have expressed to me the inefficiencies within the hospital system that they face every day when it comes to sexual harassment, some physical violence in the workplace with patients. And I think that as a next state rep, all 3 of us should be very concerned, or all the 160 state reps, the governor, everybody should be concerned with implementing a law now that keeps nurses and doctors safe when they're in hospitals in a working environment, and charge the people that are committing those crimes.
Just to follow up on that last point, so right now it's a misdemeanor to assault a nurse, where it's a felony to assault a police officer or a firefighter. I believe that they should be on the same level. It should be a felony if you assault a nurse. I mean, it's just someone that's trying to help you. As far as the question 1, I'm a yes on question 1. Mainly I'm a yes on question 1. A little background. So you got the American Nurse Association, which is basically made up of nurse managers, and they're no one question 1. Mass Nurse Association is made up of bedside nurses. They actually broke off from the Mass Nurse Association because they felt they weren't being represented properly. This question would have never came to legislation if American Nurse Association and the hospitals didn't funnel so much money to fight the Mass Nurse Association on proper staffing and proper patient ratios. And if you read through the whole law, which not a lot of people have, they have ratios per department. I do not believe that this will affect closings of hospitals. It did not affect that in California. It will not affect patient safety. I think it just comes down to basically nurse safety at this point.
So pivoting backwards again, we got a question from a reader on the opioid question that we'd asked before, and Lisa says, if you do not have a prescription for Narcan, it can cost over $100 a dose. How do you plan to make Narcan more affordable?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
If you don't have a prescription for Narcan, it can cost over $100 a dose. How do you plan to make Narcan more affordable? Well,
right now, I can go get a prescription for Narcan for as an advocate for someone else. So
I think she's also interested in how to make it maybe an over-the-counter drug. Do you support that?
I think anyone can get a prescription for Narcan right now, as Nate said, to support someone else that they know is addicted. So I believe that insurance covers that.
Okay. Another question that we just got was, how would you plan to support the fishing and maritime industry in our district if elected?
Well, you know, growing up over 26 years in Marshfield, I have a lot of friends who are fishermen, and I believe that, you know, just supporting their cause with the down at the harbor, supporting dredging issues, you know, supporting funding to maintain the harbor, to get the money they need to properly fund the machinery to do sand nourishment and to repair the jetties after big storms. You know, that's something a representative can do on the local level. At the federal level, some of these issues are more complicated. The fishing limitations and that type of stuff that the fisherman industry has to deal with, and unfortunately, it has hampered their business model over these past many years due to the excess regulation. So, I would work with my local legislators, Senator Pat O'Connor, the mayors, and the governor, to try to get them to talk with our federal elected officials. Possibly, we might have Congressman Peter Tedeschi if he wins. But if not, it'll be Congressman Keating and our Massachusetts delegation. That's who you have to reach out to try to get these fishing regulations changed.
I experience firsthand every day the ridiculous, unsustainable regulations that the government is putting on the fishing industry, and it's such a long list of regulations that we face every day. Right now, recreational and charter boat fishing, you can't keep any cod. That was due to a terrible mismanagement of the fishery, and right now it's 0 cod per person north of the 42 latitude line and 10 cod per person south of the 42 latitude line. So we're pitting local economies in Massachusetts against one another, and it's having a terrible impact on Marshfield and Scituate. Most recently, because of the cod shortage and cod and haddock supposedly swimming together, they reduced the quota of haddock from 12 fish per person to 0 fish per person. So once again, not only have they taken the cod away from that industry, we now can't sell a charter to go haddock fishing. And that has a huge detrimental impact on the local economy, and it's part of my economic development plan is to roll back the regulations on the charter and charter boat fishing industry. It's not only the charters that it affects, it's fuel businesses. Sean Harrison and Amelia Fuel. It affects Scotty Sinclair and Pete Belson at the tackle shops. It affects business when those guys go out to eat at Haddad's, the Jetty, or the Mill Wharf after their charters. It's a big problem. The other issue that we've faced recently is a 3-month closure. It's 3,000 square nautical miles of closing the lobster fishery in Massachusetts. Massachusetts, as a Commonwealth, is the second largest state when it comes to fishing for lobster. We're selling $300 million worth of lobster every year, and when that closure happens, it has a big detriment to the lobster fishermen. They can't fish for 3 months out of the year. Their gear isn't in the water for the spring run. It takes a lot of time to get 800 traps in the water. So not only making sure that they can fish, but also the governor most recently passed a bill that allowed for the sale of lobster tails and fish parts after they come to the pier. And that we've seen Republican Bruce Tarr from Gloucester, a state senator. I look forward to working with him as well and making sure that we protect our coastal towns whose economy really flourishes on the fishing industry.
So I haven't dealt with it firsthand, but I work with many people in the lobster industry. Green Harbor in Marshfield is consistently the 3rd, 4th top producing commercial harbor in the state. And the regulations that they face just in Marshfield and guys going fishing on Scituate don't face with the closure for the 3 months is they're feeling the effects of it. And what happened this year too is there were some whale sightings. So they were closed for an extended two more weeks. And the big misnomer around here is that there's never been a whale entanglement around here. And there are fishermen that I've talked to that have come up with a special knot. It's almost like a Chinese finger knot that would negate an entanglement. And these regulatory agencies aren't willing to work with them, aren't even willing to go out with them and witness, do observations with them to see if it would work, if it would behoove them. I think there's got to be some give and take, both between the fishermen and the regulatory agencies. That's just my personal feeling.
Yeah, they actually implemented a plastic brake on lobster gear, and as Nate said, fishermen were willing to work with the agencies on the lobster break, and after they were willing to implement that to reduce entanglements, it then went further into a closure. So it needs to be a give and take. The fishermen, the scientists, the environmentalists all need to be working together, and it's a 30 to 50 ton whale, and I think the breaks are 500 pounds. So.
And also, there's just one other group in the state, the Seaport Economic Council, that's doing great work. It's chaired by the Lieutenant Governor. She's come down to Situate and Marshfield, being proactive with funds to help with the marina in Situate, and we've got a new harbor master station in Marshfield. So, you know, groups like that, that's a collaborative effort. People from all over the state, you know, mostly coastal towns are on the board. And, you know, I'd like to be really involved in that. They were just down in Marshfield a month ago or so when the new harbor master station was open. So, you know, those are issues, obviously, that as your representative, I'll work closely with.
I think we're wrapping up. We're coming to the end of our half hour. Did you guys want to, you know, maybe make a closing statement, or, you know, kind of send our readers and watchers off with something? I think I started.
There was no confetti on the.
No confetti.
No confetti filters.
Nothing.
Thankfully, it was a very boring meeting that had confetti falling in the sky. Do you want to start with the closing?
Sure. Again, I'm Nathaniel Powell. I'm the independent candidate. I would respectfully ask for your vote on November 6th. I believe that I am passionate. I have the pulse of the community. I not only have your working experience, but I have the life experience to be your next state representative.
Great. Again, I have the necessary qualifications and experience to be a representative. I'm a graduate of Wentworth Institute and have an MBA in finance from Suffolk University. Over 26 years working in state government and also the private sector. I've been a reserve deputy sheriff for over 8 years. So the people of Marshfield and Situate, I'll listen to your concerns and I'll bring those issues to Beacon Hill. And I ask for your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to thank you, Mary, and thank the other candidates for participating in the forum today. I think that it's really important. We have a big decision to make in November. All generations really aren't equally represented at the State House. We're facing issues not only today, but tomorrow. We're facing climate change, unaffordable higher education costs, educational environments where kids don't feel safe. Our seawalls aren't sustainable. I myself have had brown tap water in Situate, and we have residents that are facing unclean water. So it is really important that we elect someone to represent the people, that has walked in the shoes of the people. That's what I am representing. That's why I'm in the race. And I would humbly ask the residents of Marshfield and Situate to vote for me on November 6th, because I look forward to bringing that same work ethic and leadership ability that I have demonstrated through knocking the 6,500 doors in this campaign to the State House to get things done for them.
Well, thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Mary.